Should be. Hello. We are coming in live for our Tuesday night live on the Reboot show. If you are coming in live on LinkedIn, please make sure that you drop a 1 below and let us know that you're coming in live and tell us where you're coming in from. And if you're coming in on the replay, please drop a 2 below. Now, this evening, I'm going to hand over to you, Luke.
Am I hosting tonight?
Yeah, I think so. What do you think, Amy?
This is the first time.
Let's give him a go.
I don't know where to start. Look, tonight we're talking about customer data privacy and the impact of loyalty on the brand. It's a really interesting topic, right? Because basically what we're talking about is the fact that around 42% of consumers have a view that if their data is not protected, that they, would change brands because of that. And so this is a really, this is like half your business would leave if you had a security breach and your data and their customer data were missing.
So are you saying that, for example, data privacy is like the new form of customer loyalty?
I think it is. I think it's a real requirement. So, what we're seeing is, with the rise of online and e-commerce businesses, and particularly during COVID, people moving to that, customers have an expectation that the data is secure. And I think that's reasonable. I think that's fair enough. I'd expect that as well. So what we're talking about here is the fact that if your data is not protected and you have a breach, then customers will churn. They'll leave.
What are your thoughts on the topic, Amy?
Well, I think we're moving from a customer point of view, we're moving towards much more of an experience and the focus on the experience of the customer, and also the feelings of quite personalization with your customers as well. So I think from an experience point of view, obviously, if your data's out there and you don't feel safe and you think that it's going to get thrown around, that's not a great experience from a customer point of view. But from a company point of view, they need that data in order to personalize their communications and their services and everything. So I feel like we're in this bit of a conundrum here where the companies, they kind of need that data, but people are more reluctant to give it. Like, what do you guys think?
Well, I think it's an interesting conversation, right? Because I think data is being collected so quickly and in such a diverse manner that I think it's quite difficult for brands and for companies to know how to actually keep their data secure, because I think so many of them don't even realize how much data they are collecting. So if they don't know that they're collecting data, then how do they know to keep it safe, if you like, and protect it? It's an interesting one.
Have either of you ever had a situation or know of someone who's had a situation where they've been involved in a data breach, where someone has, lost their data? Like, there's plenty of...
I do.
Yeah? Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was from more of an employee point of view. There's the customer side and then there's protecting your employees' data too. So, there have been breaches where companies have inadvertently, shared some details that they probably shouldn't have shared around someone's personal information. And that's a pretty big deal. That's a huge, distrust with privacy and all the rest of it, and has some real big implications. So, I think there's the customer side and the employee side. And to Sally's point as well, they're collecting so much data sometimes they actually don't have the processes and systems and things to sort of know what they can share and what not to share, and then how to interpret that data and how to get the insights that they need from it as well. So I think that's a huge thing to consider for companies.
So you probably want to hear from me some views about what IT and businesses can do to protect their data. What do you think? Do you want to hear that?
Yeah, I think you should share them.
I don't know. Let us know in the comments below first. If you're listening to this, let us know if you want to hear from Luke around what some of the companies are doing to protect their data. Let us know.
Yeah, well, look, I think just briefly, there's a few things. So one of the things that really stands out to me is, do companies really need to store the amount of data they're storing?
No, I would argue not.
I know that CRMs have hundreds of thousands of fields and you can fill them all with customer data, but why do you need to do that when you probably only need a certain amount of data to do a certain amount of things with your customers? So I think one of my tips is look at what data you need to service the customers and what your people need to service the customers and make sure that's what you're building out.
Well, I think, on the note of, for example, do they need to collect as much data as they actually do? I think the problem is that there's a lot of marketing hype, right? And so, we're always talking about data. Data is the new oil. That's where all the money is. So all of these companies are like, oh, no, we need to collect all this data that we haven't been collecting before. So let's start doing it. And then they realize when they start collecting it that, wow, we've actually got a problem here because we maybe don't know how to keep this secure. We don't even know how to organize our data, and therefore we can't even use the data and derive insights from it. And I know you always talk about data rich, insight poor. And that's the problem, because they get caught up in this marketing hype, I believe, and they do it out of pressure to keep up with everyone else.
My point two is exactly that. So when organizations store customer data, I think the other thing they need to do is limit the amount of access within their organization to that information. Not everyone needs to get access to customer data, so manage that really carefully. And my third tip, obviously, is security. You've got to make sure you've got good security practices, that your encryption is up to date, that you're practicing good hygiene when it comes to security. And it's not the responsibility of just the security guy. I often hear this from security managers and leaders and security officers within organizations that say, it's all up to me. No, it's not. It's up to everyone in the organization to make sure data security is in place. And that needs to be, that involves training, Amy, make sure it's in there, accountabilities. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I guess, in terms of like the employees, they need to know how to handle that data. So training is so important. As you said, they need the right systems and the processes in place, because this isn't something that we were used to dealing with. 40, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have that much on systems and technology and everything that we've got, these days, thankfully. And from a branding point of view as well, I think one thing to mention is that it only takes one breach for your brand to be completely destroyed. I remember there was a case that stood out to me. It's kind of one of those companies where I'm like, well, kind of a questionable company anyway. I don't know if you guys remember it. In 2016, there was the story of the data leak from Ashley Madison, which was the dating site. You guys remember that one? And look, that was kind of a dodgy, questionable dating site. I'm not saying, I know too much about the site, but they had like 37 million users. All of their data was leaked, and it was across like 40 different countries. And that's massive. Like, how does a brand even recover from that when you think about sentiment in the market and people's trust? Like, I don't know your thoughts, Sally, from a branding point of view. Like, what are some of the things that companies aren't thinking about when it comes to their data?
Well, I think you raise an interesting point, Amy, because and I'm no expert in this space, but if you look at things, say, like GDPR, that's been brought into play to protect the consumer, to protect data, but there's actually a lot of criticism around GDPR and similar policies that are supposed to govern data in certain sectors, in certain countries, et cetera, because a lot of people are asking, well, GDPR isn't actually being enforced in any case. So at what point are we going to see these measures enforced so that people, or companies, I should say, are then punished, so that then those sorts of accidents, if you like, are actually deterred and they avoid them? Because there's, sort of like, you can govern these situations and data by putting in place all of these policies, all of these rules, but if they're never enforced, and then when things go wrong, then no one's ever going to learn from the mistakes. And every other large company, whether it's the likes of a Google or a Facebook, will just sit there and go, oh, well, they didn't get punished. So, if something happens, we should be fine. And even if something does happen, we'll small fee, because they don't even know how to enforce these laws yet.
My fourth point.
And people are making money. Companies are making money from this data. Sorry, Luke, you go.
No. Well, right, that was the point I was about to make is, look, let's not forget that data is very valuable, so companies do on-site. So there is a huge amount of money to be made out of sharing data about customers. But it's got to be done safely. And the other thing I think is really mandatory in this is it's done with transparency. I think customers deserve the right to understand how their data is being managed if they require to understand that. And it should be part of the branding that your data is safe with us, and here's why. And we can share with you exactly how we keep your data safe. Now, if there is an incident, I think the other thing that I'll say to you is crisis management and being able to respond to a data breach incident is one of the highest things that organizations need to have in place. Practice it, be able to be preventive, yes, but also be able to have good practices in terms of telling people when their data is stolen. So if my data is stolen, I want to know, and I don't want to wait. I want to know straight away.
Can I bring up something interesting there, just for us to sort of throw around a little bit? So what role do we play as consumers? So someone's left an interesting comment here. Forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Idris, has said, agreed, security is everyone's responsibility. Now, I think this leads into an interesting conversation around data security and what role do we play as consumers? Like, is there a question that we should be asking around, have we become too complacent? Have we become too passive? Do we willingly hand over too much data? Not to say that data breaches, et cetera, are our problem or our fault, if you like, but is there not a conversation to be had around maybe how comfortable we are with just handing over all of this data?
No, look, I think in this modern era, you do get into a mode of handing over data just to get things activated and
better
experiences. So it's mixed in with your experience. I mean, the customization of front-end websites is huge. You know, I noted one of our subscribers here, Edwin Goon, he's saying,
free, you're the product.
Remember, it was free, the product.
Yeah.
What a great...
Is that the cost of personalization online?
That is. I think it is.
We're the product.
It is. Yeah.
Look, I just want to round out my commentary because there are people who will be interested in the tech side. So there are two more things. I think one is make sure you've got good compliance in place. So, you know, we know now that compliance and, you know, getting audited and making sure that your team is aware of those audits and doing something about it. I don't know how many organizations I've been into and pulled out an audit report and you can read it and you can see it was suggesting things from 1995 and you ask the person, have these been done? No, they haven't. They've never been done. We left it in the bottom drawer and we thought it'd all just get resolved. That doesn't work. So compliance is really big and putting in place monitoring. One of the biggest security things I've ever learned is...
But monitoring what? What does that mean practically?
Yeah.
I'm about to say. Monitoring involves being able to monitor your environment and be able to record and play back what just happened. So you may not be able to stop these smart, well-funded, I don't want to say government, I'm not allowed to say that, am I? Data hackers. You won't be able to stop them. But what you can do is record and be able to play back and see what information they got and where did they get it from. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in security.
Well, I can imagine recordings like, Amy, do you believe that, for example, if you have those sorts of monitoring practices in place, that then those recordings, if you like, that information could then be used for training purposes in terms of upskilling your existing employees so that they can maybe start to identify how we can pick up on certain things and become better informed about this?
I think as Idris said...
I was asking...
Oh,
Amy.
Go ahead, Amy.
No, it's fine. Like, it's fine. No, I think with you know, with the trainings, I think it's really crucial now that people get digitally literate, and so that means how to make sense of all this data and everything that's going on, really, because if you're not a digital native, and even for digital natives, you know, millennials and Gen Zs and everyone that's sort of grown up with this technology and are kind of it's second nature, you know, to give out our information and to share things online. If that's not a real natural thing for you, there's a level of upskilling that needs to happen in terms of being able to know how to best use that from a company standpoint as well, in terms of the data that's collected and how you can use that in your role and the do's and don'ts. So I think, training is really important. So there's definitely lessons to learn from that.
Critical. I love Chris Doble and Karen's comments as well. You know, where the commodity these days, says Karen. Chris Doble is saying the thing you need to know is what data you need. I love that. That is what is the golden data? What do you actually need to have moments that matter with your customers, and how do we build out that in this very customized world of user interface to make sure that the customers are getting a great experience? But we're just taking the data we need. We don't need to take 100,000 fields of data about our customers.
But I think this goes back to what we discussed before around that pressure. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure in the business environment that if you're not collecting that much data, then, well, do you really have, you know, good value in your underlying business model? That's the pressure today's day and age. So I think, you know, to your point, Luke, around making sure you're only collecting the data that you actually need that's going to actually help inform better business decisions, well, there needs to be education on that. And I think leaders need to be engaging the right people to help them go on that journey, because if they don't have that existing knowledge, then they're just going to follow the masses, if you like, and just start collecting everything they can.
Yeah,
no, great.
And from a consumer point of view, there's nothing worse than sitting online and having to fill out a 20-question online form that could be answered in 2 questions. So, you know, it actually detracts from the experience.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think the key takeaways are for our audience tonight in terms of this?
I think one thing that's really surfaced from this, which is exciting given the timing of our event with WeWork tomorrow evening, but I feel like one of the key things that's surfacing here is sort of that growing relationship between human and tech. And we're trying to find the balance. We're trying to understand how we can cooperate better with tech, which then leads into the data space, et cetera. So I think that's one of the key takeaways is we need to understand as business leaders, as practitioners, et cetera, how we can better approach adopting technology to ensure that, say, for example, on the data end of things, and maybe how that contributes to customer loyalty, we can actually take the best steps for our business to ensure that every decision we make is in the interest of our business and our customers.
I like that, Sally. What about you, Amy?
Yeah, I think, look, it's bigger than making money. You know, there's the making money aspect, but you have to think about the consumer experience and the personalization because, you know, you can go after the money and the data, but you'll actually lose customers by doing that. So I think that's finding that balance and that fine line, I think is really important for businesses.
Yeah, Cristobal makes a really good point, and thank you for engaging so much, Cristobal, around making sure you give your data to a brand, and you don't expect that they just continue to bombard you either
and abuse that
that privilege of getting your information. I think that's a really good point. What we do know is that this is going to continue to be an interesting topic for technology because as we move more and more online, more organizations will engage with you, and we're trusting them with our information, and they have to put money into it. They have to make sure they're really good at it just as much as they are selling their product.
And for anyone who is interested in exploring the conversation around the growing relationship between human and technology, we have an exciting live panel segment with WeWork tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We can share the details with you in the comments below. And what's the other important last call to action, Luke Stowe?
Well, you've got to subscribe to the Reboot Show if you're a fan of this Tuesday Night Live, because the Reboot Show is where we have all our fantastic segments. There was a really good panel segment just released. That was with Larissa Rose and Ian Christensen from iMove.
About the future of transport.
Future of transport.
So go on over to the Reboot Show YouTube channel. Please do make sure that you subscribe. If you are on LinkedIn and coming in live this evening, please drop a 1 below. Let us know where you're coming in from. If you're coming in on the replay, drop a 2 below. And thank you very much, Amy and Luke.
Hey, and agree with Karen. I watched The Social Dilemma the other day, and it's a fantastic show.
It's a really good one.
Not that I'm supporting or sponsored by Netflix.
Great tip, Karen.
I'll be happy. Karen, great tip. Subscribe to our channel, guys.
Thanks.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.